This is Jenny from the Sewing Palace in Helena, Montana. I'm going to show you how to make a 12-inch finished block using the 8-inch mix and match Qube from Accuquilt. The pattern that we're using today is from Thimble Creek Quilts. It's a cute little Santa quilt, and the block that we're going to work on is this one behind me. It's month 4, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about the math and which dies you're going to be using from your Accuquilt Qube. Let's look at our block. This is the 12-inch finished block. Each one of these units is going to finish at 2 inches, so it's a 2-inch grid. So right here is 2, 2. This is a set of 2 2-inch grids, so that's 4. So 2, 2, 2, and 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. 12 inches finished. The block is unfinished at 12.5. If you're looking at these little squares, this 4 patch, that's 2.5, 2.5, 4.5, and so on. So that's how you know how to break down your block. We're going to use the 8-inch mix and match Qube. So I'm going to show you the dies that we're going to use to cut those pieces. So right here is our die number 1. It's a 4.5-inch cut, 4-inch finish. That'll work for our center block. Here is our die number 2. It's a 2.5-inch cut, 2-inch finish. Those will be for our 4 patches. And right here is our half square triangles, and those are 4-inch finished half square triangles. That will make up our star. Here's our block right here. You need a couple of different fabrics. You'll need something for the 4 patch, 2 different colors there, 2 different colors for the half square triangles, and then a center block. My inspirational fabric for this block was this one here, so I'm using pinks and grays and greens to make that block, and we're going to use die number 1, 2, and 3 out of the Accuquilt Qube. Let me talk to you a little bit about my fabrics. This is die number 1, that's my center square, and that's what I'm going to use with this. I only need 1 of those, so I cut a piece of fabric big enough to cover that space. I prepped the fabric with a little magic press, which is a mixture of Terreal Magic and Best Press, and starched it, so that's ready to go. I only need 1 of those. This is die number 2, and it makes the 2.5-inch squares. I need 8 of each color, and there are 4 here. So if I stack these up right sides together and make sure I have a big enough piece, this will cut my squares. So I have a pink and a background color for my 4 patch units. And then lastly, I need some half square triangle units. I picked a light fabric and a green, and that will cut 2 at a time. It has those great little notches for lineup. So now we're going to cut. We're ready to cut our first piece. We're going to use die number 1, which is going to cut a 4.5-inch square. And this die is set on an angle so that the blade doesn't feed right into the cutter evenly or straight so that it hits the blade. So you want to get this on grain. So when you've cut your square of fabric and starched it, you can use painter's tape and mark a 1/4 inch line, or you can mark it with a pen, and then you have a line to visually see so that when you put your fabric down, you're still going to stay on grain. Then you're going to cover it with your mat, put it into the cutter, and when you, with the crank cutters, when you push it, you'll start to see where that crank which way it wants to go, and then you'll just feed it through. When you've got it all cut, you can cut up to 6 layers. When you've got it all cut, you'll just twist that mat and then pull your piece off, and you have a perfectly cut 4.5-inch square that'll be the center of your block. I'm ready to cut my 2.5-inch squares. This will cut 4 at a time. I do need a total of 8 of each color, so I'll do this 2 times, but I'm going to lay these fabrics right sides together. I've pre-starched them, and on my die I have actually marked with a Sharpie the line so that when I lie these fabrics down, I can stay close to my grain on my fabric, and I can get them so that they're perfectly placed. I'll lay my mat, and then I'll get ready to cut. Now you could stack more than the fabrics that I did because it will cut up to 6 layers, but I'm just doing those for example. I've cut with die number 1 and 2. Now this is die number 3. This is going to make a 4-inch finished half square triangle. There are 2 pieces here, and there's a blade down the center. Again, you can look at your grain of your fabric and twist it a little bit by using a painter's tape or a mark with your Sharpie pen. Line that up. I've laid the fabrics right sides together so they're ready to sew. Feed it into the cutter. And voila, I have my half square triangles. So we'll put our block together next. We're going to put our block together. So this was die number 1, a 4.5 inch out of the Qube, and this was die number 2, making a 4-patch unit. And I've used white and pink, so that's a 4-patch unit. That was die number 2. And then die number 3, which is here, is your half square triangle unit, and that will go like so. So you'll just build your block with half square triangle units around the outside, coming off from the center, and then the 4-patch units will go into the corners. The other beautiful thing about Accuquilt is these notches are so perfect when you go to sew them. When you line these up, they line up perfectly. You sew a 1/4 inch seam. When you press that open, it should still measure 4.5. It'll finish at 4 inches. So that is how you're going to do it with Accuquilt. How cool is that? You did it. You made block number 4 from Santa's Village using the 8-inch mix and match Qube from Accuquilt. We used die number 1, 2, and 3. Good luck cutting your blocks. This is Jenny from the Sewing Palace in Helena, Montana. Bye-bye.